My great-grandparents come from Rose, Italy, in Calabria, and the farmland that they were working on was exhausted completely, just wouldn't produce the same amount of produce that it once did. And so there really was a substandard form of existence. It was a lot of hardship, a lot of making ends meet in a very difficult way, working off the land. And so they had the opportunity, whether to, or at least the decision before them, to stay where they were, stay in their ancestral homeland, or find more opportunity somewhere else.
I have grandparents from Rose, Italy, and Mora Irpino, which is now Mora de Sanctis.
Well, my parents' families all grew up here, and 2 of the 4 grandparents came from Rose. 1 in Chickahominy and 1 in Coscob.
As they prospered over here, and the estates needed more work, okay? It was perfect for them. They were laborers, they were masons, they were stonemasons, they were gardeners, they were everything. See, so this is what the town basically needed back then, because it was starting to, you know, there was a lot of big estates here, so they had to work here. They could get into the country, so they went and they brought more people in, and they all settled. This is like little Rose Cosenza here, Mayanas. It was tough for them. They didn't earn that much money, you know, but they were able to purchase some houses. You know, everybody knew everybody. Everybody shared in everything. My grandfather built his house. He must have had, who knows, 5 or 6 of the guys that he worked with come over. They built the house, see? They couldn't go out and hire anybody and say, oh, but that's what they did. So they built his house. Then he would go over and help somebody else build another house. That's the way it worked back then. It wasn't dollars. It was you help me and I'll help you, and so they bartered everything off like that. It was fantastic.
It's a neighborhood where I could go all the way up and down Valley Road, and I can tell you every single person that lived in each house. I've been in all of those houses. Not only that, but behind our house, Harold Street, every single family that lived there, who lived there. And what's uncanny about it is that they all had the same traditions that we had, coming from Rose, Cosenza di Rose. All the older ladies, they would always like give you a cookie or a pizzelle, or if they were making something, you know, my Aunt Philomena Figliola was on Harold Street, and so she would always kiss me and give me pizzelle. She was famous for that, and something to drink, and I'd be on my way. And I remember in our traditions, a big tradition in Easter is we would make frittata. Everybody would make it, which is a big omelet with eggs. And I remember walking down Harold Street, and I could hear a woman, this older woman, I could hear the fork hitting the bowl, and I knew she was making frittata, just like how my grandmother was making it and my mother was making it. So there's something about that when you're in a community and you're a child, that there's something about that embraces you.
Like anywhere else, as time goes, families expand and people leave. I think we still have a pretty large concentration of, well, now we're 3 and 4 generations of people that have known each other, and are, not that we see each other on a daily basis or even a weekly basis, but we all still understand that heritage, and we all cherish that heritage. I have friends that I grew up with that I found out later in life my grandfather was in their grandparents' wedding party. So those things are very special, and friends that I have from other places are always sort of shocked when they come here and they see people walking down the street or driving down the street, and you spend more time waving and hearing horns honking at people because everyone knows everyone else. I don't think you have that flavor in a lot of places, and we do still have it here.
An important part of the community was the St. Lawrence Society, which was started about 1922. It was a place to get together with friends and have a social life.
My husband's grandfather was one of the founders of the St. Lawrence Society in Coscob.
I am 3rd generation, and my sons are 4th, and my grandchildren are 5th generation.
My daughter Kristen is not only the fourth generation of the family to be on the board at St. Lawrence, she's also the fourth generation of the family to live in the house my grandfather built on Harold Street.
They got together, they all, with their expertise, donated their services and built the St. Lawrence Club that is active to this day.
We had about 160 charter members here, basically all from the same town in Italy.
I used to come to this St. Lawrence Club as a little girl, and all the families would be here, and later when I was a teenager I would volunteer here and do community service. I would be a waitress here, and it was so funny. You know, I didn't know some of these people, you know, I didn't know them, but they knew me. So I would come here and they'd say, these ladies would say, "Oh, you're gonna help us waitress, you're gonna serve?" And they'd say, "Who are you, honey?" And I would say, "My name, I'm Lorene DeAndrea," and they'd say, "Oh, you're Eleanor's granddaughter, or you're Dominic's daughter." And they would know exactly who I was, and I had no idea. I had no idea, you know, as a young girl, like who these people were. But they knew all of me. They knew my family. They knew where I came from. They knew everything.
We all live under the impression that this was a group that came almost exclusively from Rose, Italy. But there's another town a couple miles away, name of it is Acri. And I've been told that almost half of the people in this area that we call Mianis, that is conventionally called Cascab, came from Acri. So they blended. They certainly weren't the Hatfields and the McCoys, but I'm sure the blending was not the easiest thing in the world for them initially, but they did blend, and I think that the club here is a testament to that. We're here now 90 years, and the intent was to help each other. And we've grown that from helping each other to helping the community, and that's what we strive for here. We're very family oriented, as is in the culture.
They are like your family. They are like your blood. They're, you know, I mean, there's people in this that are still connected to this club that I feel that bond with them because I knew their great grandparents. I knew their families. I was in their kitchen when, you know, it's just an incredible experience in that way.
I've been a member of the club for 49 years. Back then, you know, when they started the club, you know, the charter was started in 23. They all worked hard. My grandfather went back 2-3 times. He got his brothers, he got some of his family. When they can get into the United States, they went over. They got people from their same town. They needed to work here. They brought them over for work, and they, you know, and most of those people from Rose settled right here in Mianis. Then they formed the club, you know, the St. Lawrence Club, because where was there to go back then? There was no television. They worked hard. A lot of them worked on the same, with the same construction firms and, you know, excavators. So this was a way to come after work and have their social activities, play their games, talk about what's going on. I remember when they started the St. Lawrence Feast, I was still 10 or 11 years old. We would have the feast right here in the back. The woman would do all the cooking. Okay, we had everybody from around. Was one of the first feasts. They made the pizza. They had the games. We really looked forward to it. On Saturday, they would bring in the Italian band probably from the Bronx, someplace. The band would travel the streets, go around the neighborhood with the flag, the Italian flag. The residents. Tradition, they would pin money on the flag and they would just hit all the streets and then they'd come back to the club after.
The feast I remember vaguely. I remember my grandfather carrying the banner that they used to carry down the street, and people would come out of their driveways and pin money on the banner as they walked down the street. I do remember them carrying the statue one time, and then I think they used Dom DeAndrea's father's truck for the last couple of years that they did the parade. A veneration to the saint. I don't know what they did with the money, but it was veneration for they used to carry the statue of St. Lawrence through the street.
My grandpa, he would play the accordion, this like special accordion, and my grandma would be playing the tambourine and all. They played all the Italian little tarantellas and all this music and all that they knew from their land.
Then we had a mass on a Sunday, the final day, and it was quite exciting. The club has changed a little bit because back then there wasn't much to do. This was a real social activity for them, a meeting place. Today there's so many things for these people to do. We're members. I'm a member through tradition. I come down. Whenever I live right next door, and so I think it's great to still have the club of which my grandfather was one of the founding members. And so I like to keep the tradition. When I go back to Rose, I almost think that I'm in Miami sometimes. So it's quite exciting.
I've always laughed at my whole life because I always wondered how big this village in Italy called Rose was, because I said, well, if all these people were from Rose, Italy, how could we not all be related? How could there be 20 families of Chiappettas in the town of Greenwich and not have them all related, and they all came from the same town in Italy? So I assume that at some point in time we basically all are related somehow or another, and if you do go back far enough, you do find those connections, which is fun. I think as we get older now, we all start digging into that sort of a thing, and all ignored it up until now because it really didn't. You live life, and now you have more retrospective things that you look at.